happy day. Nice to see you. Gospel of Mark, 5 minutes at a time or thereabouts. Today we're in chapter 7. We're reading through verse 23. And the word I'd like you to hold in mind is tradition. You may remember Fiddler on the Roof, tradition. Let's look at how traditions play out in these stories. Let's think about where you meet tradition in your life. And think about it in relationship to God's traditional call upon you. I'll read it. You read along. Now when the Pharisees and some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus, they noticed that some of his disciples were eating with defiled hands, that is, without washing them. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they thoroughly wash their hands, thus observing the tradition of the elders. And they do not eat anything from the market unless they wash it. And there are also many other traditions that they observe, the washing of cups and pots and bronze kettles. So the Pharisees and the scribes asked Jesus, "Why do your disciples not live according to the tradition of the elders, but eat with defiled hands?" And Jesus said to them, "Isaiah prophesied rightly about you hypocrites, as it is written, 'The people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines.' You abandon the commandments of God and hold to human tradition." Then he said to them, "You have a fine way of rejecting the commandments of God in order to keep your tradition. For Moses said, 'Honor your father and your mother,' and whoever speaks evil of father or mother must surely die. But you say that if anyone tells mother or father, 'Whatever support you might have had from me is korban,' that is, an offering to God, then you no longer permit doing anything for father or mother, thus making void the word of God through your tradition that you have added on, and you do many things like this." Then Jesus called the crowd again, and he said to them, "Listen to me, all of you, and understand there is nothing outside a person that by going in can defile, but the things that come out are what defile." When he had left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about the parable, and he said to them, "Then do you also fail to understand? Do you not see that whatever goes into a person from outside cannot defile, since it enters not the heart but the stomach and goes out into the sewer?" Thus he declared all foods clean. And he said, "It is what comes out of a person that defiles. For it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come: fornication, theft, murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, licentiousness, envy, slander, pride, folly. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person." So Jesus is pretty hard on the tradition. And it's funny, I think about the traditions in our family. When I was a kid, we had a tradition that all three of us kids would hang up our favorite Christmas decoration first, and then all the other decorations around it. And mine was an elf. And I'd always want to hang it right in the middle of the tree, center, eye level, where I could see it. And I remember having many discussions with my older sister about where it should go and where her elf should go. And we argued over where it was to be hung traditionally, right? And it just caused fights and anger and mom and dad having to separate us and all that kind of goofy stuff. But the problem with tradition, and this is what Jesus points out here, is A, one can contradict the other, and B, we can use it as a way of shirking our responsibility or diminishing relationship. The irony is that the Pharisees were calling out to the disciples for doing something that wasn't within the scope of the tradition, And because the disciples weren't doing it, then they were outside of the family, right? They were outside the rules. And if they were outside the rules, they were no longer part of the relationship because they hadn't kept the tradition. And the people that monitor and manage the tradition get power from that. So traditions can often, not always, because traditions can be beautiful, but often are around power and authority and control and who's on the inside and who's on the outside. God gives us traditions. God gives us the traditions of the seasons. God gives us the traditions of going to sleep at night. God gives us the traditions of learning to walk and learning to run, maybe even learning to read. I don't know. God gives us the traditions of building relationships through play. There's so many traditions woven into our system that are good and noble and enjoyable and help us grow. And then there's traditions that lock us down. And those traditions, like Jesus said, are human-made. You abandon the commandments of God to hold to human-made traditions. And so my question to you is, what traditions do you honor that are from God? And what traditions bind you? And maybe even put you at risk of hurting a relationship you're in. I invite you to consider traditions today. I'm glad to be with you. Thank you for spending this time with me. Peace upon your soul.